The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Dan Logie. I'm an applications engineer here at Unitronics. I have a quick tutorial for you today on Unidde. Unidde is a standalone software available on our website, unitronics.com. And Unidde enables you to read and write data from a Unitronics PLC to an application that supports DDE, such as Excel. Today I'll be doing an example reading and writing values to and from Excel from a controller. But again, we can use any software that supports DDE. Just a few options regarding Unidde. We need a connection, either serial or Ethernet, to the PLC or PLCs that we are connecting to. We can read data from a PLC to Excel. We can write data from Excel to the PLC. And we have the option to read and write. We can do this with all operands, including regular operands, system operands, and immediate operands. Finally, we can run Unidde upon power-up of your PC. So there's no need to open the DDE software each time you power up your PC. So now, I would like to continue with the example. What I have set up currently is a thermocouple to a V1040. I'll take a look at my hardware configuration. We see my V1040 selected, and I have a Type J thermocouple selected. I also have a vector starting at MI0 and continuing to MI19. So I have a vector of 20 MIs that is logging my temperature. If I go online with VisiLogic, we can see the last 20 seconds of temperature. If I hold my finger on the thermocouple, the temperature rises, and the newest temperature is entered into MI0, with the older temperatures falling out of the vector at MI19. Now my goal is going to be to view this data in Excel. So I will open Microsoft Excel at this point. And I'm going to begin a new Unidde project. First, we have to define a PLC in Unidde. It's going to first ask me for the name. I'll refer to my VisiLogic project. And in rung number 1, I have PLC name set to PLC. So I'll enter PLC as the name. It's going to then prompt me for the type of PLC I am working with. We have our color touch models, our 130, our standard series, and we have our Jazz and M91s. I'm working with a 1040, so I will select the color touch. If we're working within a CAN bus or RS-485 network, we have to select the node ID. I'm going to be using an Ethernet connection today, so I will not be using the unit ID. It will then ask me for the type of operand that we will be working with. You see that I have the option for all operands supported in the Unitronics controllers. I'm going to today read an MI. It's going to ask me for the start address. The start address of my vector, my temperature values, was 0, MI0, with a length of 20. Finally, it's going to prompt me for a command. Do I want to read write, or read and write. I'm going to first demonstrate how to read a value from the controller. And finally, I need to set up my communication settings. Again, I'm using Ethernet. I know that my IP is 10.2.2.91. And I'll be working on port 20256. 20256. Okay. And you see that my PLC is defined. My range is defined here. To display this in Excel, I'll right-click on my range and copy the read command to clipboard. I'll go back to Excel, and I can paste this command anywhere inside of Excel. And here is my read command. To view my values in real time, I simply open up the Unidde software and select Run. And here are my values in real time. Again, I'll hold my finger on the thermocouple, and we see the temperature begin to rise. The great part about the Unidde software is that we can use all the Excel functions. So I'll select my vector, and I'll go to Insert, and I will insert a line graph. And we see my temperature changing. I could, of course, set a name for this graph. I could set a name for the axes, and I could change the ranges. But this demonstrates how we can use the Unidde software to view data graphically. I'll return to Unidde, and I will stop the process for now. Next, I'm going to demonstrate how to write a value from Excel to the PLC. To do this, I'm going to define a PLC. And a very common mistake is many users enter a new name, PLC. This is incorrect. We do not want to enter a new name. Instead, we're going to select the already defined PLC from the list. And you see the communication settings appear. If we entered a new name, PLC, even though the names are identical, the software is going to treat them as two different PLCs. So again, we want to select from the drop-down. Next, my goal of this example is going to be write a value to MI50. So I will select MI from my operands dropdown. I'll enter the start address 50 with a length of 1. Again, instead of reading, we are going to write, and we can select OK. Here is the vector. We have MI50, length of 1. We're going to right-click, and instead of copying the read command, we are not reading, we are writing. We're going to copy the write macro. For those of you familiar with Excel, you may already know how to build a macro. I'm going to cover this briefly. So I'm again going to select the command, copy write macro, and I will enter Excel. In Excel, I will select View, and finally to the right, Macros. From the drop-down, we will view Macros. Now we must create our new macro command. I'm going to name the macro command Test and select Create. The following window appears, and I'm going to paste my macro command inside of Book 1 Module 1 code. Now there are two things we need to modify in the code. The first is the worksheet. We see sheet 1 XXX. I do want the macro command to apply to sheet 1, so we will delete the XXX and leave sheet 1. And next we would like to modify the range. Instead of starting in A1, I'm going to start in D3. So I'll enter D3. And our macro command is built. Whatever value is inside of D3 will be the value we write to MI50. So I'll close the macro. Next, we need to link our macro to a button. So I'm first going to build my button by selecting Insert, and I'm going to insert a text box. And I'm going to say send value to MI50. This will be my definition and my text box. And I'm going to modify my text box slightly to look more like a button by going to Format and changing the format to somewhat of an unpressed button. Looks a little bit more like a button now. Just as a side note, this does not need to be a text box. We could use a shape or something like that. I chose to use a text box. Finally, I need to link my macro. I do this by right-clicking on the text box, scrolling down to Assign Macro, and assigning my macro test to the box. I will again open the DDE software, and I will choose Run. We see my graph begins to update. I can click inside of D3, and I'll enter a value of 500, and I will send 500 to the controller. Now let's open up my Unidde. I'll verify my connection. And I'll go online. And remember, we wrote to MI50. So I will visit MI50, and we see a value of 500 currently in MI50. I can change this value to whatever I wish, and I simply need to activate the macro by clicking my text. We go back to VisiLogic, and we see MI50 is updated to 200. I can stop the DDE. Finally, I would like to show you how to run DDE on PowerUp of your PC. We do this by File, Options. We see I can load a project on startup. I will load my project called DDE. This is this project built. And now on PowerUp, this project will load, and I can auto run, meaning on PowerUp of my PC, I can automatically run the DDE software. There's no need to interact with it whatsoever. Once we set it up, it will run as soon as your PC powers up. And again, it just runs in the background. And you interact with the Excel spreadsheet that you have built. So this covers our short tutorial on Unidde. Thank you.